Alright, welcome betters. This is Mitch with Better Picks. We're going to do this a little differently today. We're not going to be doing anything in Python. We're just going to be looking at Excel because I'm going to explain linear regression at the high level, and I think Excel's a little easier to do that in. We'll eventually do it in Python, but for now we're just going to do it in Excel so we can see this. So again, this data is available on the website. I'll put a link in the description. It's limited, but that's what we're going to use for now. If you want the full data set, it's available on the website. So what we're going to do in this example is see how rushing yards impacts the number of points a team scores. So what I'm going to do is here I'm going to grab all the data. So quick shortcut, you do Command Shift down and it'll grab everything below. And then I'll also go to rushing yards and I'll do Command Shift down. And then if I copy everything, I'm going to open a new sheet and I'm going to copy and I'm paste it in there. So basically this is the data, just the smaller version that we just copy and pasted. It has the team name, the number of points they scored, and the rushing yards that they got. It doesn't have the dates, but for this example, we're not going to need it. Let's just quickly, I'm going to change the order of this, and I'll explain why. So what we want to do is we want to have the variable that we're predicting in the column on the right so that it plots on the y-axis, and then we want the variable that we're going to use for prediction on the left. So we're trying to predict points using just rushing yard. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is, so since those are switched now, what I'll do is I'll quickly just take all this and we'll go to insert and we will add in a scatter plot, and we can kind of see how points is now on the y-axis, right, because it only goes up to 60, and then rushing yards is clearly on the left, and you would want to add axis titles, but we're not going to do that. And click any single point and then double click, and we're going to add a trend line. And so now you can kind of see how the variables interact with each other in a sense, so that looks like the more rushing yards you get, the more points you score. And what we can actually do is we can display the equation, and I'll just make it a little bit bigger so that it's easier to see. So it clearly says that this. So, well, what does this actually mean? Is this a model yet? Let's see what I'm talking about a little further. So we're going to want to make sure you go to Tools and do Excel add-ins and make sure that your analysis tool pack is checked. And then once that's checked, you go to data and you go to data analysis, and this button should pop up if you have the analysis tool pack installed. If you don't, I would recommend going to help and typing in add-ins, and you'll be able to find it pretty easily. And then you're going to want to click regression. So a regression is essentially the simplest form of machine learning model, and it's not quite machine learning in this example, but it's the basis of it. So we're just going to hit OK. We're going to choose our y variable, which is points, and y just means what you're trying to predict, so we're trying to predict points, and x is the variable that we're going to use for prediction, so we're going to choose rushing yards since we're trying to predict points using rushing yards. And then we're going to include labels because the first row is a label, so and then we'll just choose an output. We'll say, let's put it right here, and we'll include the residuals. And we'll hit OK. Take a second, and it'll plot everything out. Okay, so what actually just happened? So basically we just ran a regression model. The two things I'll explain are, first is this, right? So these are the coefficients, and if you notice, these coefficients match exactly what we saw on our trend line. So what's actually happening here is the trend line becomes the prediction model, right? So if I actually take the rushing yards and the points here, and I copy and paste them down here, you can see that there's prediction right here. And so what I can do is I can say, so if I take this and I say equals, and I take the, so if I take the coefficient, which is this number, and I put the little dollar signs around it just to make it so that it stays the same, and I multiply that by the rushing yards, and I add the intercept, and I put dollar signs around that so it doesn't change as I drag, it's going to give me exactly the prediction, right? And so essentially this is a model now. We're saying, how can you predict points using rushing yards? This is the equation, and it matches the exact same equation that we have here. So basically it's the slope and then adding to the intercept. So literally what you learned in algebra in 6th grade, y equals mx plus b, right? And if I take this and drag it all the way down, now I have a prediction for every single game based solely on rushing yards. And the final thing we'll talk about is, just for simplicity, is the r squared. So the way to think about r squared is it's it's a measure of accuracy in a sense, but it's not quite, this doesn't mean it's 15% accurate. What it's saying is that the model and the variation in the number of points is explained only partially by rushing yards. So it's saying that about 15% of the variation in the number of points is explained by rushing yards. Hopefully that makes sense. This is a quick way to make an initial model and to start understanding what's happening here. And we're going to do this in Python eventually, but I think it makes a lot of sense looking at Excel and being able to just quickly output, the data here, seeing the prediction, and then eventually in the next video we'll actually add additional variables, not just the rushing yards. Thank you guys, appreciate you. Make sure to check out the website if you get a chance. If you want the data early, check out the Patreon. If you want a full set of data, check out the data page. And we do everything for free, so donations are appreciated. All right, best of luck with all your bets.